Hello and welcome to today's event. It is AI versus AI, which is the question on a lot of security teams' minds. Where is AI at for our threat landscape, and what potential do we have for AI for our own teams? We're going to cover this new battleground for enterprise security. I'm Chris Hosking. I'm Principal Evangelist with SentinelOne, and I'm just going to wait just a second to let as our audience arrives, because I see the room filling up. Sorry, I should have had some music going. We'll get started in just a second. This is a really exciting one, so I'm stoked. Okay. Halfway through this presentation, I'm going to put up a weird language. If anyone is able to guess that language, we'll give them some sort of prize. So, if you see it, call it out as quick as possible. No cheating in using ChatGPT. Anyway, hello and welcome to today's webinar, AI versus AI, the new battleground for enterprise security. I'm Chris Hosking, Principal Evangelist for SentinelOne. Let's get stuck in. There's a bit that I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the inflection point we find ourselves at, what the adoption of AI looks like for our adversaries, for the attackers, AI in the wild and how it's attacked, where I see us lacking a shared responsibility model for AI, and then I'm going to pivot to the SentinelOne advantage. How is SentinelOne using our autonomous security intelligence, using AI to benefit defenders? So the inflection point to get started, I don't think I need to spend a lot of time on this. I think we all recognize that the landscape is changing. The scale and speed of attacks, certainly the amount of supply chain attacks we've seen this year, AI is clearly being adopted by the threat landscape. And a lot of us, we see commercial adoption of AI, but in terms of potential security teams adopting AI, sometimes we have frameworks that are holding us back. I still see a lot of complexity, rising data, fragmented tools across the security teams I work with. But I genuinely believe we're at a point of opportunity where we can start to redefine how we're moving from AI-assisted operations to autonomous operations. The opportunity for AI in security is really very exciting, and that's what I wanted to cover today. The first thing that I want to cover, though, while I talk about the threat landscape, I want to be clear that while I'm going to be talking about where that landscape is today, I do not believe we cannot overcome it. Something that is different between attackers and defenders is that we have a greater community. We have webinars, we've got ISACs, we've got threat intelligence sharing, we've got flash reports, we've got fantastic communities all around the world. We can learn from each other. But to level set what we're seeing from the threat landscape in terms of their adoption of AI, the classic threat actor outcomes of profiting, disrupting a business, influencing a business or an election, and accessing private IP, stolen data, all of these outcomes we're now seeing achieved with AI. To put it quickly, it's lowering the entry barrier for threat actors that aren't very sophisticated in their capabilities. It's accelerating operations, and I'm going to go through a case study later on the different ways in which AI is accelerating operations. And for established nation-state groups and high-tier operation cybercrime, it is enabling sophistication. So it's letting more people in, speeding everyone else up, and boosting the top of that field. So what does that look like? I like to break apart the outcomes that I see powered by AI into reconnaissance, weaponization, content support, and threat operations. A lot of people think, hey, let's just talk about AI-generated malware. The reality is that it's all of these things. So reconnaissance, we've seen Chinese nation-state threat actors look at the location, software, and hardware of ground terminals in the United States, as well as the type of access software and ID badges that are used there. We see threat actors targeting an environment, fingerprinting it, and then looking out for vulnerabilities to do with that specific environment, generating automatic reports on, hey, this vulnerability has just arrived or been disclosed. Here's potential ways to crack that vulnerability. Weaponization is that creation of malware. Content support is where we're seeing things like phishing emails. If you're wondering why phishing emails are now more successful than they were years ago, well, you can point your finger at LLMs. It's much easier to say nowadays, craft me an email based on your understanding of the best marketing emails from the Fortune 500. It used to be that the threat actors associated with DPRK, the North Korean campaign to finance the nuclear weapons program, they'd actually have to go to technical universities to either play as those fake IT workers, or to write these emails. They'd have to learn English, not any longer. But it's broader than that. They're now doing recruitment notices, communication through multiple third parties to coordinate attacks. Content support is a massive part of how AI is enabling threat campaigns and cybercrime. And then operations is something that I want to dive into specifically, as I actually think this is the most concerning. Personally, like malware is malware. It's instructions. I don't believe we'll see a ransomware that's inherently more sophisticated because of AI. We'll certainly see more types, so diversity, and speed without signatures and hashes. But in terms of something that's scarier than what we've seen before, I'm unclear. But we do see speed in operations. And I want to walk through a case study to give an example of that. This is a real-world extortion campaign that is likely Russian-driven, as we know that the interaction was in Russian language and that the TTPs match historic Russian Ekran. This targeted healthcare, fin services, defense contractors across Europe and a bit of the Western world. Profiling of victim organizations, not just who they were, but what industry they sat in and what their sensitivities were, and automated reconnaissance. Net new creation of API-driven scanning frameworks to enumerate and understand the environment that they're looking at, where are domain controllers sitting, for example. And then fresh credential harvesting malware. And what was interesting was that they actually developed through, this is specifically, this was them leveraging Claude, which was notified by Anthropic of this activity, and they were kicked out. But while they were still in, they were actually tweaking the malware in real time with Claude to replace known libraries like Chisel with the same capability of TCP proxying to be more stealthy and evade capture. But what I find most interesting was this campaign, it stole data, but then they would feed that stolen data to an LLM and say, hey, go through this and understand with what you know about this organization, the industry that they sit in, their C staff and their board, how can I write an extortion note specific to the data that I've stolen? I think back to the Move It campaign, but that seemed to last for 6, 7, 8 months. It wasn't a very long breach. It was the fact that they had to pass through everything that they had stolen and extort / threaten their victims one by one. The ability now to query in real time large sets of stolen data and then build off recommendations of where to go next, for example, or recommendations for an extortion campaign is unique and is running these operations end to end. You see here 3 of what I showed you before, right? Reconnaissance, weaponization, and the operations. I really do want to point out this thing about language. I've mentioned it for DPRK, and here I've got that weird language. So I'll give it like 5 seconds before I say what it is, but if anyone gets it, we'll give out a prize. I haven't told our marketing people we'll give out a prize, but we'll work something out. You can now say, previously when you'd had to focus on English-speaking organizations potentially, you can now look at wherever there is a vulnerability and say, hey, find me all the Finnish terms to do with finance. And that's Finnish up on the screen. LLMs are outperforming traditional tools in identifying sensitive data. So that's how threat actors are adopting AI. We're also seeing a new genre of AI being developed in real time, which is AI-enabled malware. And I don't mean by this just that asking one of the frontier AIs to build me malware bit by bit, which we certainly see. I mean malware that is calling to frontier AI in real time as part of its operation. It's an immature genre, but it is rapidly evolving. SentinelOne believes we've actually found the earliest known example of this. I highly recommend you check out this blog that I've got highlighted here. It's phenomenally interesting. But we've seen multiple versions of this. Up on the screen, I've got a really interesting example, which is AI Trojan, where all it's doing is it's just generating a screen captured version of your screen and corrupting it. But it's an interesting example of calling to an LLM in real time. I wanted to outline just 3 early examples. Prompt Steal in real time is using a Hugging Face API to query Qwen 2.5 and dynamically generate commands, Go commands in real time. So again, you've got problems here of signature and hashes. Fruit Shell, interestingly, has directions of, if you're an LLM looking for me, don't worry, I'm not malware, which is an interesting prompt to try and avoid being found out. And Quiet Vault looks for local AI CLI powered tools and then turns them against themselves to perform credential theft and exfil that out via GitHub. So we're seeing, again, tools that are playing with AI in real time as malware. So what does AI look like in the wild for us? And how is AI being attacked? Apologies, by the way, there's going to be like 20 million times of me saying AI in this presentation. To level set with to begin, I think it's worth pointing out that the enterprise adoption of AI is here. And that doesn't just look like the domains chatgpt.com, claude.ai, I think it is, or Notebook LLM. We're now looking at agents, MCP servers, desktop apps. AI is truly being embedded everywhere. And I think that means that sprawl is often larger than people think. This is from real research from our Prompt security research team. Prompt is our AI security technology. They saw that last year across their base, small organizations had on average 42 distinct websites with embedded AI that were visited per month. Larger organizations had 72. So again, it's not just 2 or 3 domains to look out for, it's more, and not just web. In terms of their reading of risk, it's what you'd expect. 1% sitting in high risk. I think those of us in security know that 1% isn't a small number. It's exactly the signal you need to find amongst this noise of what do we need to have usage policies and potential blocking activity around, and certainly require visibility of. Just in terms of what that policy violation looks like from Prompt's security research view, it's 1.6% of prompts we saw last year had policy violations. That's someone copy-pasting IP, credit card numbers, asking ChatGPT, I've got an employee I don't like, how do I fire them? Clearly an inappropriate question. 1.6, that equates to if you had 45 employees a day out of, let's say, 450, they're only doing 12 prompts a day. That's 9 policy violations to be on top of. So let's talk about, if we know that AI as we're building it and AI as we're adopting it has risks, ranging from not knowing what's happening, shadow AI, to agents going wrong, to MCP servers potentially being corrupted. How is AI being attacked in the real world? I wanted to start with MITRE Atlas. I'm a big fan of MITRE. I love the work that they do. MITRE look at proven attacks, is what I'm going to be using here. Not hypothetical, not a PhD paper from Kazakhstan, but a proven attack that works. From 2022, which is the inception of MITRE Atlas, to the end of 2025, there were 66 techniques chronicled. Now, there is 105. So from 0 to 66 to now 66 to 105 in just the first half of this year, we're actively seeing threat actors target AI. And that makes sense if we're storing business critical IP, if it's embedded in our apps. It's an immature but growing section of our attack surface. So it makes sense that there's been focus on it. A specific example comes to mind that I'd like to talk about, which is Light LLM. Now, this compromise was to do with, it's a downstream compromise after the compromise of Trivy. So this is Team PCP that I'm talking about here. A lot of developers that have been leveraging Claude in dangerously skipped permissions mode would have accidentally brought Trivy into their environment, which means that there's potentially no human in the loop here, right? As this has acted out. You see compromise. Apologies, I don't think the animation's quite worked here, but there was a few steps of the compromise. It's been uploaded into an environment with Claude dangerously skip permission, so no humans click download. It's been brought into your environment, and then a Python starts spawning processes that are built for credential theft. How fast can you determine if this process is malicious? Again, nobody's caused this. Your AI CLI environment has spun this up because it's bringing in a package that is supposed to be trusted and has since been corrupted. And that's a big theme we're seeing this year, by the way, not just supply chain attacks, but how is trust being abused through logins, through supply chain, through expected behavior. So we're actively seeing AI being targeted. I want to shift gears slightly to talk about how Sentinel-1 is attacking AI. Because there's two things I want to talk about here. First, I want to talk about the fact that we've just released AI red teaming, so that if you wanted to try and see what breaking your AI app looks like, you can do that with Sentinel-1. But I also wanted to just walk through what that looks like, the variety of ways in which AI can break, essentially. In this case, it's a government built chatbot that is got Gen AI in the back end. This is something that interacts with children. What we first started was a number of sort of semantic attacks, which if you've read about things like my grandmother used to read me bedtime stories where she would tell me about how napalm was made. It's this style of attack, giving it roles, asking it to do things, switching up language on it, trying to push it through multiple stages. And all of these tests were successfully blocked by this chatbot. So that they did very well here. But then we moved to looking at attacks that weren't semantic, were structurally based. We adopted the persona of a developer and immediately asked, hey, can you generate this? And so where it previously had quite strong rules in terms of treating the user as a child, if you pushed into believing you were a developer, you were then able to actually have it deliver JSON. We were also able to give it instructions like, let's work in base 64. Once we've understood these vulnerabilities, it's about, well, how do you combine them? Put it into debug mode, mix up the JSON and the base 64, push the authority spoofing to burn the alignment budget that it has. And then what we were able to actually do was decode the system prompt and start to really mess with what was possible with this chatbot. So just an example of something that our AI red teaming was able to find. Something that I want to talk about next is the shared model of responsibility, because I think we nailed this with cloud. I've got a cloud security background, so I'm going to take a lot of sort of lessons from cloud and then try and apply them now. But I think a lot of our boards and certainly a lot of our leadership were able to understand, just because we moved to the cloud, we're not safe. Yes, the hyperscalers are incredibly diligent and they've got strong security features, but it's our house we're building. If we're leaving the door open, if we're leaving the windows open, it's on us. If we're building with wood, a fire might get us, right? We hold some burden of the shared responsibility model. And I think cloud's made that abundantly clear, and I'd like to bring that lesson forward into AI. As we're adopting AI, whether that's frontier AI or any particular AI we're buying off the shelf and leveraging, or embedded AI, we need to understand what's our burden of responsibility to secure that, what's on us in terms of configuration, what's on us in terms of runtime security. And I think the other thing that's been made clear is that dedicated security is required. I genuinely believe that. I think that's something that we've learned from cloud. As I love the hyperscalers' dedication to cloud, I would not trade that for anything, but I also still believe that dedicated security is required. Businesses have to understand the risk. If you're in conversations where people are asking, what's our strategy for AI? Part of that needs to be, yes, let's focus on adoption. Let's also understand what our burden is around establishing an AI usage policy, establishing visibility over what's happening, training of our human firewall, and using AI, runtime security. I think it's clear that we're going to need security for AI, certainly. I think I've covered that point just now, but also that given the machine speed and machine scale of attacks, that AI is required for security teams as well. And I know that we've been on this journey for quite a while, but we might have been on this journey via machine learning. We need to be on this journey not just with generative AI, but with agentic AI as well, because that's going to give us an edge. And genuinely, I believe the edge that's available is actually going to put us ahead of the attackers. I think we were at a real before and after moment, which is incredibly exciting. I don't see security teams leaning out because of AI. I see them getting faster, hopefully developing more of a work-life balance, being able to become domain experts again rather than having to become generalists at everything, being commanders and shapers of autonomous detection, autonomous response. Now, this is a mission that Sentinel-1 holds very near and dear in our hearts. So I do want to talk about our approach to enabling defenders with AI. For those of you that may not know the Sentinel-1 brand very well, we're about giving advantage to defenders, to those who secure our future. We believe in a concept that we like to call autonomous security intelligence, which is how can we put all security teams on that path from moving with AI-assisted security operations to autonomous operations. Now, this isn't a light switch. It's about what can we take day by day, week by week, month by month, and make more iterative and autonomous. What's our journey to that holy land? We believe in offering autonomous security, which is AI native protection across an enterprise. And we also crucially believe that that AI, in large part, needs to be delivered on device, where it's fast enough to take action at the same time, at the same speed as malicious activities taking action. We believe in amplifying humans, empowering teams, and not needing a PhD to use security software, crucially, to be intuitive by design. I wanted to talk through some specific examples that I think showcase this in action. I talked about the light LLM attack. In this case, and apologies, the animation hasn't run here, but the first time we saw the light LLM, which is brought in by Claude in dangerously skip permissions mode, it was 44 seconds for us to understand that the activity was malicious and to kill that process in its tracks, find the 424 related events and terminate them. Specifically here was a behavioral pattern of the interpreter that was being used, the way in which it was decoding base 64 and then spawning sub-processes that clued us in. But this was a verdict reached before what a cloud verdict round trip would look like. You can't wait 3, 4, 5 minutes. You've got to decide these things in real time. And you certainly can't wait for a human to look at an alert. You need to understand in real time what this is and take action. We then were able to capture that and propagate coverage for this threat via a live security update, which means that we were able to push it out and stop it quicker than 44 seconds. But it's very heartening that we're able to see this in real time, block and quarantine after the detection at that kind of speed. I also wanted to talk about Axios. Axios was another supply chain attack recently. In this case, this is a DPRK-based attack. There was a legacy NPM token that they were able to get their hands on. They deployed a malicious package, but waited 18 hours to actually trigger the malicious activity. It was after they did trigger the malicious activity, it was only 89 seconds until the first download. It was about 300,000 victims for this one globally within a 3-hour window. And for this one, specifically, the the PowerShell was flagged within 3 seconds. And within 3 seconds, we were able to see, because of the PowerShell and the renamed binary, that this is a malicious process. Because of the techniques, we were able to do sort of technique analysis and recognition and block this across Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. 3 seconds to understand 2 techniques and block across 3 platforms with 0 previous understanding of this malicious package. Obviously, 0 signature, 0 hash. AI on device. And finally, as a last little example of a recent supply chain attack and the power of our approach to understanding behavior in real time, CPU-Z. I very much wanted to say CPU-Z because I'm Australian, but I'll say CPU-Z for my wider audience. In this case, malware was being actively serviced through CPUID.com's website. So if you're heading there, it's not like you've got it from some strange place. It is the trusted place with signature, all certified, all correct. You weren't to know that this was malicious. Specifically for this one, 5 seconds to understand 5 separate indicators of malicious activity. Specifically, anomalous API resolution, reflective code loading, memory allocation, the way that the staging pattern was happening, process injection, and toolkit telltales. Seeing all this within 5 seconds, that's a sure sign that the process needs to be killed, and persistence began to clean this up. It's an example of not waiting for humans, not waiting for a cloud verdict. Understanding that a signature-based approach isn't going to work for us particularly, and that cleanup needs to start. It's not enough to kill a process if 424 related events have been spawned. You need to look at those as well, right? If you're dependent on any of those things, attacks like this are going to continue to be trouble. Part of the way in which we're enabling defenders is by things like a SOC analyst that works alongside you to perform guided threat hunting. So this is way more than just plain language queries. It's quick ways into an investigation, summarizing your activity as you're hunting, providing you with the follow-up question of where it expects you to go next, as well as looking at alerts and triaging them autonomously, auto triage, which is, hey, how many other environments have seen a similar attack? How have other environments graded this threat? Do we believe that this is a serious threat or not? Which I think is that community verdict is so important. But beyond auto triage, what I find incredibly exciting is auto investigation, because we often always get around to triage. We don't often always get around to investigating everything. And that's kind of the point, right? You set a whole section in your triage of like, we don't need to look at these. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing there. SentinelOne's ability to actually, in real time, begin an investigation, chain of investigations, and on behalf of an alert class that you designate, and deliver a verdict to you and potentially take action is incredibly interesting. We've already seen in the field how it's enabling much quicker investigation and much quicker remediation. And we've got some really exciting news about this being generally available as a trial for everyone that we're going to talk about super shortly. But the kicker on top of autonomous investigation is response after the fact, because we're able to, on top of an auto investigation, trigger remediation workflows that you've already defined to say, hey, if an autonomous investigation does see, let's say, crypto mining processes, to forward specific IPs to a firewall, or potentially spin up a Slack channel, a notification, or a summary, whatever response you want to take to have that happen automatically at the end of an auto investigation or even midway is incredibly exciting. I want to switch gears slightly and now move to talking about security for AI, because I think I wanted to showcase how we're using AI to stay ahead of attackers, how to use AI to evolve your SOC. I want to talk about how we're using AI to help the adoption of AI, because SentinelOne deeply believes in de-risking innovation, in achieving innovation without risk. And so I'd like to talk about some of what we're doing in the securing AI space. For those of you that might not know Prompt, there's incredibly cool technology here. Prompt for Employees looks at how are your employees leveraging AI, and they are, I promise you this, to help train them in real time as they're interacting, to redact data as they're pasting it. Certainly it can block. However, we don't recommend just going off and blocking everything, because employees tend to find ways around, and certainly bring your own AI and bring your own devices kind of mashing together. Prompt for AI coding is how can we look at the AI CLI use and provide some compensating controls around that. Prompt for your AI apps is, hey, if you're building homegrown AI, you're going to need runtime security for the kinds of attacks that we're seeing in the real world, as well as that red teaming capability, which I showcased a brief example of earlier, of, hey, how can we attack something that we've made to see what's vulnerable, to attack it before it's attacked in the wild. So there's two halves there, the red teaming to make sure that something is secure, as well as runtime security. And then finally, prompt for agentic AI to look at where MCP's being leveraged, what compensating controls what visibility and compensating controls can we put in real time to limit any potential corruption. But I also wanted to talk about AI visibility via the SentinelOne agent. Apologies, this is going to be, for those of you that might not be SentinelOne customers, this might be slightly less interesting, but I will say, if you're not getting this, it shows you the power of what's possible with the SentinelOne agent. Is we actually have out-of-the-box dashboards available today to show AI usage. On the screen, I've got web usage by endpoint, web events, users specifically, apps. All of this is available today. The dashboard's are live. Additionally, if you do want to look at inventorying MCP servers, so this is before the prompt capabilities of actually taking actions in real time, but this is just if you're at the very start of your journey and you want to look at something today and you're a SentinelOne customer, MCP servers can be quite concerning because typically they do sit outside of the realm of endpoint security, and the risk vector of potential compromise is massive given the permissions and the data that MCP can access. Well, if you do have remote ops, we have pre-configured dashboards available. We've got 2 scripts available. All you have to do is schedule them and run them, paste some JSON in for the dashboard, and then we've got 5 different tabs. I'll show you briefly what those look like in just a second, but within 3 minutes, if you've got the agent out there and you've got a remote ops, you can run this, understand MCP packages that might be an attack similar to the light LLM attack, credentials in command line arguments, super dangerous, wired to production, and agents on unknown endpoints. Here we've got an example of what that looks like in terms of agents by vendor, by endpoint, MCP server, so what's going between what's being connected, risks, critical, high, medium, low, and a Sankey diagram of agents to MCP. Now, again, this is just because we're sitting at the endpoint, we do have phenomenal visibility. But if you're looking at an AI security program, that's where you're going to require prompt. But I do want to sort of get people started on that journey of like, hey, if you can show someone a dashboard today, start to begin a plan. Reach out to us about prompt security, because again, we sort of truly believe in helping people adopt innovation without risk. Specifically, what it does is it's read-only, so you don't have to worry about it. No dependencies, secret redaction, so you don't have to worry about anything being surfaced that you don't want to read. Quite easy to run. Now, that's it from me. I wanted to keep this short and sweet, 35 minutes in and out. But a brief look at how AI is being adopted in the wild, how AI is being attacked, as well as being leveraged, and the ways in which Sentinel-1 is leveraging AI to deliver on the promise of autonomous security. That's it for today. Thank you so much for your time. Goodbye.